Hey everybody, my name is Philip. Welcome back to the PDRest channel. Today we're going to take a look at the ARCA car around Rockingham. This is a really fast track with really only one line to get through, but it's not a boring track by any means. It's really fun to drive. The car wants to step out, you got to fight it, you got to save tires, but you can also be aggressive. It's a pretty good mix, and I really enjoy this track. So let's jump right into it. For steering ratio, I'm using a 14:1. I prefer that over the 10:1 because I don't tend to burn up the front tires as much. This is a track where it's incredibly easy to overdrive the absolute mess out of the car. And I find with the 16:1 ratio, it's harder for me to catch slides and make the finer adjustments quick enough because this track is so fast. When it comes to brake bias, I start the race at 62 or 61. I'm toying right now with which one I'm more comfortable with, but that lets me rotate the car a little bit into the initial part of the corner so I'm not relying so much on just the front end to get through the corner or to start my turn. And what I'll do is, as the race goes on, I'll flip through my black boxes and I'll kick that brake bias back a little bit more every so often. As soon as I start feeling the car want to get tight on entry, or a little bit tighter than I want it to, then I'll kick that brake bias back maybe 0.5% or 1%. But do be aware that will make the rear of the car a bit more lively as you get down into the corner. And one of the keys here, speaking of getting the back of the car stepped out, is actually trying to stay in the throttle or flick the car in enough to get the rear of the car a little bit unsettled. Not a crazy amount to where you feel like you're drifting through the corner, but you want the rear of the car to be kind of wanting to swing around so that you can hold a constant steering angle going into the corner, and then once the car settles in, you can add a little bit more, but you don't want to add too much. I do have an example later on in the video where I'll show you the difference between getting the back of the car to step out on entry versus not doing that and what happens with the car. So now we're going to take a look at the track map. And track is a bit of a funky shape, but that's what makes it so good. It's got such aggressive banking or high banking that you can really sail it around the corner and the car will stick, but it's also easier to overdrive because of that, because you think that you're taking care of the car and you're actually not. So looking at corners 1 and 2, you see your initial entry into turn 1 is a bit shallow because the front stretch kind of turns down. So that's going to be a corner where you begin your turn in much sooner than you would initially think. And you want to get it pointed right down to the bottom of the track, and then you'll let the banking catch the car and kind of sling it around. And coming into turn 2 or out of turn 2, it is a bit of a late apex corner. So when you're about midway through these corners, it'll be okay to let the car ride up maybe half a lane so that it can turn down and then catch right at the yellow line coming out of the corner, because it does tighten up a little bit as you exit. So coming out of turn 2, like I said, it tightens up a little bit, and you might find the car wants to jump loose on you right there, so the back of the car is going to get kind of unsettled occasionally if you're not driving up towards the wall. But the backstretch also has banking. So if the car does step out on you on your corner exit and you try to catch it, then there is a chance that it can kind of snap back the other way. So say the nose of the car is pointing down towards the inside wall and you're counter steering it and you think you've about got it caught, it could just change direction really fast and point itself up to the outside wall, and you'll be spinning around or in an accident by that point. So one of the better ways to save the car if that's happening is just gently back out of the throttle to maybe 50% or so and let the tires grip back up before you chase back after the car. Turn 3 is another corner that you're going to turn in a lot sooner than you think. And your goal is to get it pointed right down to the bottom of the track again and really hook that bottom lane and ride that around until you exit 4, where you can kind of let the car ride up a little bit. This side of the track is where a lot of your time is going to be gained or lost. So in a practice session, I ran several laps around the bottom lane in 3 and 4, and then I did some on the second lane in 3 and 4. And I found that although the tire wear is roughly the same and the tire heat buildup is about the same between running the two lanes, you are actually giving away, on average, a tenth and a half to 3/10 of a second every lap by running that second groove in turns 3 and 4. So it's really important to get it down to the bottom. A lot of the drivers around you are going to know that as well. So there's a good chance that people might go for an absolute dive bomb or really shove the car in at that point. So if that's the case, if you feel like that person behind you is really going to sail it in, give them the room, because that way you can continue racing and you can run them down if they burn out their tires or get caught behind lap traffic. Sometimes that's one of those areas where there's just no sense in trying to fight for the same real estate, because one or both of you is going to end up losing that battle. So up next, we'll take a look at the qualifying lap, and then we'll talk about it more in depth. So coming across the line to set a 23.188. I was pretty happy with that lap. It's been my best one this week. So now we'll take a look at the actual qualifying lap in depth. And you'll notice we take the second lane to begin the actual lap because we can carry a touch more momentum. It's worth maybe a mile an hour or two down this front stretch here. And now just past that second rock sign, we're going to just now let out of the throttle. And you can see that I steer and then back out of the steering a little bit. That's because the back of the car was getting light. And then once it hooks up, I turn in and we get back to the power pretty aggressively because we're not worried about tires. And we power back out. Looking for the rock on the right hand side of the wall there. Just pass it, and that's where you'll start your turn in. And you're aiming for where the white line in the track meets the yellow line on the bottom of the track. That's going to give you your best chance to hook up and really run this bottom line. Then you'll get back to the power really aggressively once you feel the car kind of settle in and hook up with the track. And make sure and hold it low. You're cutting out some travel distance and you're cutting just a little bit of time off of your lap. Now that we've seen the qualifying lap, I wanted to show you some race laps as well, so you can kind of feel the difference between the two. So we don't drive in quite as hard, but we still kind of flick the steering wheel just a little bit to get the back of the car a little bit lighter, and you can see we're a lot less aggressive with our power. We are trying to roll into the throttle more than stomp back at it. And we're letting the car roll towards the middle instead of powering it down to the middle. But there is a fine balance. You still want, as you kind of flick the wheel a little bit, you want to keep power on just so that you can start that initial rotation. And one of the similarities between the qualifying lap and the actual race lap is that in turns 1 and 2, it is okay to let the car ride up about half a lane again before you get it turned back down. And you can, as you roll into the throttle, if you've got the car already kind of rotating, as you roll back into the throttle, it should keep rotating more than straighten up. So that's kind of that balance that you want to look for to save that right front tire. So now I've got an example coming up where I want to show you what it looks like if you're not really getting any slip at the rear of the car and you're just relying solely on the nose to corner. What you're going to end up finding is that the car is going to get really tight on you really quick. So here you can see we don't really induce any of that rotation, and we're having to add steering as we're going into the corner and throughout the corner, which is not good, especially over a run, because you're just burning up and creating a lot more heat in that right front tire. And one of the things you want to look for around here is as you go into the corner, you kind of have to be patient with the car. So once you try to throw it in, you don't really want to keep adding steering. you want to find a line to where once you start your turn in, you more or less hold the steering wheel in roughly the same position, or you're able to unwind the steering a little bit. If you drive it in like this too much and you end up adding steering coming out of the turns, then it's going to get really loose off as you try to power out. And for the last example, I wanted to show driving in too deep. It's so easy to want to really drive into these corners because there's so much banking and you feel like the car can handle it. But if you do, as you can see, it just kind of ends up pushing straight and it doesn't really grip up that well. So some closing final thoughts here. You're going to want to, on your qualifying lap, you're going to want to be pretty aggressive with your entry, but you don't want to really ride the brakes all the way into the corner. You still want to let the car roll, but you want to be more aggressive with your exits. In your race laps, you want to try to let the car roll towards the middle a little bit more. Make sure you keep that back end having that light, kind of uncomfortable feeling. It's uncomfortable at first, but once you get used to it, I promise it feels a lot better. And you'll feel like you have more control over the car as the run goes on. And then be nice and easy and roll into the throttle over the course of your longer runs. And you should be okay. As the race goes on, that second lane in turns 3 and 4 is just going to get worse and worse. Even though it feels like eventually it'll pay off, in my experience, it really doesn't. So you want to try to keep the car low and don't really open the door for the person behind you. But if you do, let them, race them, but don't pinch them or try to drive them down to the line because that's only going to cost you and that other person the race probably. So if you have to, let them by, and then you maybe can get the car turned down and get a run coming out and get back under them for turns 1 and 2. That could just be something that you try and see how it goes. And then if you haven't done it before, practice turning down your brake bias or moving it further back as you go through the race. As soon as you start feeling the car get a little bit too tight, a little bit tighter than what you want it to be, move that brake bias back. And as you're lightly using the brakes to get into the corner, you'll feel the car settle in and continue rotating like you need it to. And do be aware, if you do find yourself on the outside of turns 1 and 2, it is really common for the car in the bottom lane under you to try to push up a little bit. So if they look like they're struggling to hold the car down low, you might want to wait for another opportunity so that you don't accidentally get put into the wall and have your race ended, which otherwise might have been a good finish. Well, everybody, that's what I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found something helpful. Hope you learned some more tricks for the track. And let me know how your race week is going. And I'm kind of curious. I wanted to ask what you thought of this idea. I'm toying with the idea of putting up full race replays where I commentate over what's going on and kind of what I'm thinking as I'm driving. So if that's something that you'll be interested in, let me know, and I'll be glad to start putting some of those out. And I think that would end up being a fun thing, but I want to see if that's something that you all are interested in even watching before I put it out there. So thank you all so much for the support. Hope you all have a great day, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.